Travis Wayne Goodsell. So let's do the Sunday school lesson for Sunday, the 10th of April. Because last night, after doing my concluding review, I realized something and then went to check the Stellarium program, or as it's called in religion, my Urim and Thummim, and saw something that's coming up on the 27th of April. And will conclude 13 months later in May 27th, 2023. And because of the lesson for Sunday, it caught my attention. Because this is everything that the lesson is talking about. So the lesson is the parting of the waters and the fall of the great and abominable church and reaching the promised land. So, yeah, very, very curious. We'll have to go over the scripture first and then come back to discuss the signs in the heavens that are right now going on, because the parting of the waters has already happened. Aquarius, he passed through the waters, the hero being the planet Jupiter, the one that was born on the 23rd September 2017, or as you would know it, Revelation chapter 12 verses 1, 2, and 5. Joseph Smith translation moves that to verse 3 to make it part of that sign on that day. That did occur. And so I'm very curious of how things are going to turn out. Because as I've told you, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has ordered my assassination. They don't do it. They don't use guns and knives. They use their jobs. The people that are ordered use their jobs to cause harm. And so I'm financially ruined, and I'm being physically threatened. So this morning, I again called out for help in an effort to protect me. So I shouldn't have a knock on my door from people trying to hurt me, depending on how desperate the church does not want me to have my religious freedom. They all talk about their religious freedom rights, but they openly confessed they don't give a damn about anybody else's. And so, as Nelson told me not to hurt him, Nelson, back off. Don't hurt me. I noticed there's certain conference talks that are not being posted. Hilarious. There's some problems, apparently. Anyway. And so, hopefully if there is a door knocking on the door, as much as I will be panicked and stressed, it better be to save my life rather than to hurt it. Alright, let's begin. It's chapter 14 through 17. And to review, the Old Testament was assembled together by Masoretic Jews from 800 to 1000 CE. So it's after Constantine, and thus why Joseph Smith said, Elohim is supposed to be singular, or plural, plural all the way through. It is Constantine's Trinity Jesus that are plurals in one. See where they got that from? It's not complicated. Islam. Allah, translated into English by them as we, in the plural, even though it's singular. And so Constantine has had a massive effect on changing the origin of religion, changing the scriptures, turning them into historical documents rather than apocalyptic literature like the book of Revelation. And so the 5 books of Moses were separated, separate books, and possibly even separate authors. But nonetheless, Genesis was a combination of stories put into one complete narrative. And that narrative being a genealogical timeline without the women involved. It's King's List. That tied Joseph back to Adam. Joseph is the hero of the Genesis story, which is apocalyptic literature. It's not historical. And so it technically should be called the Book of Joseph. The part of Adam to Noah should be removed. That's unrelated. You start it with Abraham if you want to, but even those stories are pulled from other separate stories, as I went over with you. And so it's all about the Christ whose name is given in the story as Joseph. He is to save the house of Israel from the great and abominable church. And he succeeds. And he is betrayed by Judah, just like Jesus in that story, apocalyptic story, is betrayed by Judas. And instead of 30 pieces of silver, it was 20 pieces of silver for Joseph. You see how they were writing? They were getting these from older source documents from the Egyptian archives. Whether it was at Alexandrian Library or the tomb cave walls, doesn't matter. They're from the Egyptians in origin. And so the rituals, administration, doctrines, and stories are not historical. They were placed in a historical context, which was during the Roman period of time, because of the linguistic tells that are in the text. And so with Exodus, we have a completely different book, and it starts us off with the hero of the story. This, Exodus, is technically the book of Moses, because it starts off with the genealogy referring to Genesis, and then it says that he comes from the great and abominable bloodline of Levi. Levi lost his birthright, according to the story found in Genesis. And so Moses comes out of the great and abominable church. And all of these stories likewise come from the Egyptians. I know there are people with PhDs in the field who say, oh, it comes from King Sargon of the old Assyrian dynasty. No, he got it from the Egyptians. They migrated out of Egypt to Mesopotamia, and they took the religion with them and devolved it to conform to their manner of speech. Changed the language, etc., etc., etc. Added extra stories, changed the names. and so on and so forth. So anybody who tells you that they're the oldest culture, they're lying to you. The Egyptians are. Alright. And so we have Moses growing up in Egypt, but he belongs to a religion and is supposed to usurp the birthright blessing of the great and abominable church. He comes out of the great and abominable church to usurp it. And we're told by Joseph Smith that this is the pattern for his church. Joseph Smith. And we do not have it published in our Doctrine and Covenants, and I've been pushing it over and over again. And it's as bad as I had the video 1 month prior to conference saying, hey, they're going to restore polygamy for conference, and everybody, 1.5 plus thousand people, come watching that video, and then not a single one of you. I think the actual conference review for the women's session was up to 66 views last I checked, and then the one I did this morning about the sex trafficking, that's a continuation of that, guys. The whole world has been distracted by the church, thinking that the church are bigots. They did it as a cover-up, so that you would miss that they're grooming you for polygamy. And nobody wants to see that. They only wanted to see that I was predicting polygamy for conference, and everybody's going, oh, I don't see it. Oh, you had a video? I never saw the video. So it didn't happen. Yes, it happened. Mormons just will not acknowledge I was right. Because there were 30 thumbs down on that video for polygamy. That's a lot of groomed people, percentage-wise. Majority of people don't even bother with thumbs up or thumbs down. They just watch to watch. And so there's a criminal accusation involved as Moses has to flee, goes to the sun god, and gets authority directly from God in a dream. You have to refer to Numbers chapter 12 verse 6 to see that that's the case. But again, Numbers is a separate book, and the author is trying to explain the burning bush as a dream. But he then is told, go back and free the Mormons from the Great and Abominable Church. Because again, Joseph Smith, 19 July 1840. The Quorum of 12, led by Brigham Young, are Judas. And they will murder Joseph. Joseph Smith prophesied that. There were already instances where that has occurred already. In 1838 is what I have termed, from my research of the history, the leadership coup or crisis. Brigham Young attempted to coup the church. And that's how Joseph Smith got locked up in Liberty Jail. And Nelson used that to send me a death threat. False brethren. Joseph knew he had been falsely accused by his own Mormons. But he apparently didn't quite know yet, but 1840 he knew. He even knew in 1839 when he got out of Liberty Jail. And so it's possible that being locked up, he did actually know who set him up. But he allowed them not to be excommunicated. Possibly because he didn't have evidence, he just knew. But yeah, they were the ones committing the crimes against the neighbors. They were the ones practicing polygamy in secret, telling everybody, oh, Joseph approves of it, it's okay. And Brigham Young was exercising priesthood authority that he did not have. But yeah, Joseph Smith tells us in what we do have, which was why the 19 July 1840 solidified it for me, that everything that I had researched on was confirmed, was because of that document. That was the missing link, so to speak. Going, yep, everything's confirmed. Brigham Young is the great and abominable church. And so, yes, that's exactly what it means as a consequence. As we just had conference, where Razban confesses to being a Danite, and then uses religious freedom and Joseph Smith as his excuse to practice religious freedom that the Danites want practiced. Sickening and infuriating. And so, yes, Joseph Smith says that out of Brigham Young's great and abominable church will come a Mormon who will restore Joseph Smith's church. That's not complicated. It's not supernatural. It's just the pattern. The scriptures talk all about it, and Joseph Smith says that that pattern is going to be in his church when it's taken over. And so he prophesied in section 115 that this great and abominable church will call themselves the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the latter days. And yeah, remember Nelson? April 2020. He fulfilled it, even though it's been fulfilled since Brigham Young. He was going on missions telling people that was the name of the church. And so when it was time to bring them to Zion, yeah, they didn't go to the other churches. They only knew the one with that name. So Joseph Smith in 115 tells us what the church is supposed to be called after this Exodus. And it's not the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because that's an abomination, as Joseph Smith tells us in his first vision. And so, yeah, if you're new, I highly doubt I will get many carryovers from the 1.5 thousand and 600,000 and 800,000 views on other conference videos. That's not been the tradition. I did get a number of subscribers, so welcome everybody. But I'm expecting the views to begin to tank back down to where YouTube has suppressed me because of the orders of the church. And so I am realizing the importance of having conference first to give Mormons one last opportunity before Judgment Day. And so, yeah, there's some stuff going on here that I'm curious as to how they're tied with the signs in the heavens. Because in Joseph Smith translation, Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, signs in the heavens are in the likeness of things on the earth. And like I said, I saw a connection with the signs in the heaven with this story, prophesying of the latter days. because this is apocalyptic literature. And so, to understand apocalyptic literature, you've got to put Pharaoh as the leader of the great and abominable church, Moses as the Mormon born and raised out of the great and abominable church to restore the original church of Joseph of Egypt, because it says Joseph dies, a new Pharaoh emerges who knows not Joseph, and Brigham Young knew nothing of the origin of the church and the Book of Mormon. And so, yeah, it's amazing how much of a connection there is. But if Mormons are going to continue to deny truth and reality, the devil does not support their own, his own. And that's why I'm trying to save Mormons. And so I'm understanding why conference needed to happen. And so, no, I didn't get hundreds of thousands like other popular ex-Mormons who spread the lies that the church wants spread. Because if the church didn't want something known to anybody, they would have done what they did to me. Okay, so let's, after that introduction of 22 minutes-ish, let's go into the text, chapter 14. Now remember, all of the plagues occurred, and it was a contest of authority, as well as signs for the latter days. And Holland confirmed one of them, saying it was biblical. But yeah, you couldn't get Nelson to confess and condemn Putin. He just downplayed the war as wars and rumors of wars, not the big war. Battle of Magog and Gog, which is Russia, because Japheth, those are his sons, they got the land up in Russia, according to the story, written during the biblical, or the Roman period of time. And so Christians know it, and Jews know Christians know it, etc., etc. And so Biden's a Catholic, the Pope is a Catholic, they know it. That's why the Pope has come out and condemned Putin directly. Nelson? Oh, there's good people on both sides. Yeah, why? Because he's the false prophet of the great and abominable church that was shut down on Travis Wayne Goodsell. I can't start up that one until the 21st of April. And then I'll have to start all over again to rebuild a following. They purposely did not want me to talk about the war and conference, as this channel was able to do. So the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel. And so you've got to put it in the context of the Mormon, who's supposed to restore Joseph Smith's church, and he's speaking to the Mormons. And so it's our day, so yeah, social media, because he's not any of the leadership of the Great and Abominable Church. He's of humble origins. That's a consistent theme throughout all of the prophecies. And so the guy that commented saying that Oaks is the one we have to obey or die, he was wrong. He knows a little bit of Hebrew, as he supposes, but he does not understand the interpretation. He does not understand the learning of the Jews. And so he never even bothered to see if Oaks completes the checklist. And he doesn't. I went over it in the comment video, part 2. The prophecies have to be fulfilled, but not in the sense of, there being an actual Pharaoh and the man's name being Moses. Like I said, in Genesis, it's Joseph. For Exodus, it's Moses. For the Judges, well, there's several different names of apocalyptic hero stories. And so Samson is one of them. There are even some women. But those end up being the mother or the grandmother of such a person. And I noticed that the playlist on the homepage, it stops. And people aren't going to know that there are more videos. You have to click on play all. YouTube. So, anyway. So speak unto the Murmurs, that they turn and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. And so they've left. The Pharaoh's succession has fallen. It collapsed because it's father to son, and the son died with that plague, that biblical plague, which is in Doctrine and Covenants, section 45, verse 31. Again, needs to be understood that Joseph is telling us right from the very beginning, hearken, O ye people of my church. I'm going to give you an apocalyptic literature story. And in that one, section 45, we don't really see per se, but it refers to the Exodus. It's sort of a take on Matthew 24 and those comparable ones, but section 101 is even different than those, as it says an enemy comes in the middle of the night to scatter the Mormons. And so this is one that we have to take independent and look for the patterns that are similar, and then pay attention to the differences. And that's what I'm noticing here, is that the leader of the great and abominable church did not die. His succession ended. There was no heir to the throne. And so he says, fine, you can leave. You can take those who will follow you, and you have your religious freedom. And so they're now camping by the sea. And the Hebrew text is reed sea. It is the Greek text, the Septuagint, that says red sea. So no one understand. It's neither. It's symbolically referring to the afterlife. And this is salvation, guys. This is a symbolism of salvation. And so the Egyptian Amduat with the sea of reeds is what this is talking about. And it refers also to the creation story of the waters parting, dry land emerges. It's referring to women giving birth to the birthright blessing son, because the parents have been initiated, even though it's in the great and abominable church. And being initiated, you become a high priest and a king and a queen. High priestess, high priest, king and queen. Melchizedek, Melech, king. Zadok, high priest. And after the order of, to avoid the too frequent repetition, Amen, the sun god at noonday. This is the Egyptian god. Isaiah calls him Emmanuel. the God Amen. Matthew is wrong. It is not God with us. And so that's the name. It's not Jesus. So when you realize that this is the great and abominable church, you then go back to that talk and you go, oh, okay, yeah, he's preaching another God. And he set up an idol for Mormons to worship. Exactly as prophesied for the great and abominable church. And so, for Pharaoh will say of the house of Israel, they are entangled in the land, the wilderness hath shut them in. And talks about Pharaoh's heart being hardened, and he shall follow after them. And I will be honored upon Pharaoh, translation needs to be redone here, and upon all his host, and the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. Alright. So Pharaoh is going to try to take back the Mormons, the great and abominable, the false prophet, after the destruction from the biblical plague, will let the Mormons go who want to go, but then changes his mind and tries to get them back again. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled. This is reminiscent of the Egyptian story of Horus is conceived within Isis after the death of Osiris, who was a rightful king. And that is reminiscent of Joseph, who dies at the beginning of the book of Exodus. And a new king usurps the throne, and then Moses has to flee into the wilderness. And so again, we're seeing that repetition of fleeing into the wilderness, where the house of Israel is about to be born with the parting of the waters and passing through on dry land. Same pattern and symbolisms throughout the text here, repetitive. And so the false prophet will say that the Mormons had betrayed him, and will demand that they come back, that they not have religious freedom. Those ex-Mormons, you better get back here. That we have let Israel go from serving us. We want them as slaves. And so he makes ready his chariots and took his army, 600 chosen chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt, and captains over every one of them. And so this is being portrayed as a war. And that's what I realized from the signs in the heavens in connection with Revelation chapter 19. It says that he who is on the horse is being prepared for battle. Here you have chariots driven by horses, and they're coming up against Moses to battle, just like John in Revelation 19 describes. You got a war that's being taken place. The Book of Mormon, talking about the fall of the great and abominable church, says that there will be an internal contention, that Mormons will be fighting against Mormons. That's what you see here, is that concept of Egyptians fighting against Egyptians who chose to follow Moses instead of staying and serving the great and abominable false Christ. And so the chase is on. Race is on, and here comes pride in the backstretch. Heartaches moving to the inside. Or should I stick with Metallica? Well, because Metallica they're actually doing the movie version of this, but the song has to do with yesterday's lesson that only the Sunday school president talked about briefly. I purposely skipped it from here. Alright, and so I'm kind of stuck. What song should I put in the description below, if any at all? I won't worry about that now. Alright, so horsemen, horses and chariots, all chasing those who have chosen to worship how, where, or what they may. And taking back their religious freedom. And so verse 10, when the Pharaoh drew nigh, the Mormons lifted up their eyes, and behold, the leaders of the great and abominable church and their armies, the Danites, marching after them. And they were afraid. And they prayed to their Lord, and they said unto Moses, Moses is the Lord, catch that? Because there were no graves in Egypt, thou hast taken us away to die in the wilderness. They're blaming the guy who gave them religious freedom. This is a future thing. This has not happened yet. The Mormons, who leave to follow the man like Moses, the Mormon, are going to complain. Just like Laman and Lemuel complained about Nephi and Lehi. There's a reason why they're in the Book of Mormon. And let's see, is it not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, and that we may serve the Egyptians? We want to be slaves to the great and abominable church. Leave us alone. Don't try to save our lives and give us freedom and agency. We want to be slaves under Lucifer's plan of happiness. Verse 12, dear God, for it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness. A bunch of whiny baby complainers that are coming up. And Moses said, fear not, stand still and see Jesus, salvation of Yah. It would most likely be Yahweh, but Jesus is Joshua, which is Yah of salvation, which he will shew to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen this day, ye shall see them again no more forever. The fall of the great and abominable church. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. The Lord said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me, baby? Speak unto the children of Israel, that they move forward. Lift up your rod, the rod of Aaron, and the rod of Moses. Oliver Cowdery had the rod of Aaron. Joseph Smith had the 2 seer stones, rather than a rod. His dad was a master rodsman, though, in the New Israelites of Vermont. Thanks to Justice Winchell joining the group. And stretch out thine hand over the sea and divide it. And so here it is, the birth of the Church of the Lamb, preparing for Zion, the birth of Zion. And they shall go on dry land through the midst of the sea. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, that they shall follow them, more bloodthirsty upon my track than ever were the Missouri mobbers. 19 July 1840. And they shall die. The angel of God, which was sent before the camp. And so this part is comparable to, do they even connect it? No, they don't. 103:20, there it is. They do. They do. But they insist it's Jesus. It's clearly a Mormon. So yes, section 103, verse 20, and you have to go back to verse 15. They put 17 to 20. No, you got to go back to 15. The redemption of Zion must needs come by power. Because there's a change for the latter days. Jeremiah also talks about this. Jeremiah 23, and started with verse 5. He's a descendant of King David. All the learning of the Jews know this. And Constantine messed it all up, caused confusion, changed things around, and took away the plain and precious parts, altered translation and interpretation, and changed words and definitions of words. He really did a number from what he did. Okay, and it was a cloud and darkness to the Egyptians, the pillar of a cloud, but it gave light by night to the Mormons. And sure enough, right before, or right after the 27th of April, were expected, although their math is really screwed up, we still don't have the new star yet. But we do have the Book of Mormon talking about a day and a night and a day without a night. 3rd Nephi, chapter 1. And that's this year. I've been telling you about it. And we didn't have it yet, the new star, which is supposed to come. And astronomers are also saying that according to their math calculations, which we know is wrong, somewhere around May 15th is that sign. Beltages is going to blow. And it's in Orion, in the armpit, that's holding up the club that I've gone over with you in other videos on how that's Osiris for the Egyptians, the one who was assassinated. So a new star in Osiris, as it will be so bright that it will look like daytime, and it will be seen even with the sun in the sky. It'll be that bright. So day and night, it will be bright. It will be like two suns in the sky. Alright, and so children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon dry ground. The birth of the Church of Zion, the restored Church of Joseph Smith. And the wall was on the right hand and the left, and the Egyptians pursued and followed after them. And in the morning watch, the Lord looked on the Egyptians through the pillar of fire of the cloud and through the host of the Egyptians, took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the Mormons, or the Church of the Lamb, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians." So yeah, their chariot wheels collapse, like the Russian tanks. Oh, they're collapsing. They're not very good quality. Exactly the same type of thing. And the Lord said unto Moses, "Stretch out thine hand over the sea." You see, the pattern of the war is exactly the same as this, and it's supposed to be the same for Mormons. And that the waters may come upon the Egyptians, upon the chariots, and upon the horsemen. So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned its strength to his strength when the morning appeared. That's the rising sun. That's Omega of the morning, rather than Omega at sunset. the Omega sunstone symbol. And so this is the rising sun of morning, because the birth of Zion here. Those who will go and build Zion. Symbolisms all throughout this. And the waters returned, covered the chariots, and all the host of Pharaoh, and that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. Pharaoh dies. Deuteronomy 18. The false prophet shall die. Doctrine and Covenants, section 85, verse 8. The false prophet shall die, as if struck by lightning. Same concept. Joseph knew this. In section 101's parable, the prophets flee and abandon the Murmurs. So this is why I've got the curious thing about what's going to happen, because this is clearly is connected to the signs in the heavens. Alright. Thus the Lord saved Israel, referred to Jeremiah chapter 23, for the latter days. In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. That day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. So there you separate them, huh? But they don't see the Lord. They only hear from Moses, who speaks for the Lord. Hearken unto his words, and you will be saved. Deuteronomy. Alright, and so, 15, they did it. They conquered. The great and abominable church is dead. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The wicked witch is dead. The great and abominable church is dead. And so they're singing songs. Sing your praises to the Lord. Give me grant. Lord is my strength. Lord is a man of war. So yeah, the new song that is also prophesied by Joseph Smith to have happen. Elder Baxter, not the member of the 70 whose wife died recently. It's a relative of his who was my mission companion, MTC companion, and then we finished our mission in New York together in the Bronx. He wanted to be the one to compose that new song. And so here's the text. I doubt he's listening. I don't even know what's happened to him. I did see another MTC companion, well, a missionary, who was in our room, and he was a twin, and I saw him at Rick's, and he introduced me to who became my first failed marriage. He was going, I usurped her from him. I should have let him have her, but my kids were so cute, even though I only had them for a few years. Alright. So this 15 is pretty much the song. Long song. Alright. So here we in verse 20. Miriam, which is supposedly his sister, but she's being called the prophetess. There's a reason, because in Egyptian, and the Roman period author does not explain this, but he correctly talks about it. even though he doesn't understand that he is doing so. And Joseph Smith knows about it. He explains it in Abraham chapter 1. He explains by explaining what happened in the tent of Noah after the flood. Why is Canaan being punished for what Ham did? And so, yes, sisters have to be married to their brother in order to solidify the authority of the throne, to secure the bloodline. And so that's why we're called brothers and sisters in the church. And so, as people stay in a central location in minimum numbers, thus minimum opportunities for variety, and tend to inbreed. But yeah, this will be a slightly different scenario. We will be creating a diverse people into a melding pot, as was intended for the United States. Instead, we became a segregated country. Everybody wanted to maintain identity rather than create the new united identity of Americans. So, American concept died from pretty much the outset. We never followed the Constitution. People claim they are, but you've got political parties running for office. That's not in the Constitution. It's not how it's supposed to be done. But nobody cares. We created a tradition, and everybody thinks that's the way it's supposed to be. Anyway, I digress. So she's the sister of Aaron, and Aaron is the brother of Moses, and so she's the brother of Moses, and she's the prophetess, which means she's the wife of Moses. And so she takes a musical instrument in her hand, and all the women went out and dancing and timbraling. This is what's done at the temple at the wedding feast, because this is what's supposed to happen once you conquer the great and abominable church. Then you have the wedding supper feast of the Lamb at the temple, and there's a wedding feast with it. The parable of the 10 virgins, they're waiting for the marriage of the bridegroom, who is the Christ of the latter days, with the bride. And that's what this is now talking about. And so we've skipped ahead from this year, this month, all the way up to 8 April 2024. That's what's now happening. We've made it to Zion, we've built the temple, and here's the marriage, and they're singing and dancing for the marriage. This is what they did in the temples. People would bring the food and drink offerings, present it to the priests, or they themselves, being of priesthood office, present it at the Holy of Holies before the representative statue of deity. Put it on the altar, and the god would then bless it, and then the people would take a portion of that as part of what's now the sacrament, which refers to Horus being the birth child of the assembled Osiris body parts. Take in remembrance of the broken body and the blood that was spilt of Osiris. And so that's very likely why they're calling it the Red Sea in the Greek text, is the red waters of the inundation, the flood, referring to Osiris's body being spilt, the blood being spilt. And so if you don't take it literally as literal history, everything will be fine. So if you ignore Nelson, when he referred to the Red Sea, you'll be fine. If if you believe that he's telling you the truth, you're not going to be fine. You're going to be deceived. And so the wilderness of Shur, the god of the water, and 3 days in the wilderness, they found no water. Oh, the land of the god of water, and they can't find water. Huh. That's an interesting thing. And so they came to Morah, and they could not drink of the waters of Morah, for they were bitter. Oh, Miriam means bitter. That's a coincidence. And therefore it was called Morah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" Again, complaining. And so he did the brother of Jared thing, prayed to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. He cast the tree, into the water. Yeah, the tree gets cast into the waters, and the waters are made sweet. And therefore he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. Again, we need to get a better translation, but not essential. We got the main part of the story understood. If thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord, and wilt do that which is right in his sight, and wilt give ear to his commandments, which is only love, keep all his statutes, give people freedom, life, liberty, property. Don't take them away, because otherwise you're committing a crime. I will put none of these diseases upon thee. So apparently they still had that plague, that biblical plague that Holland finally confessed to. We're supposed to do it before, not after. Amos 3:7, before, which I have brought unto the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. And so yeah, they're healed. So yeah, there are some Egyptians merged with Mormons. Those who do not want to be a part of the war or of the Great Mormon Church. And they came to Elim, where were 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. Bountiful. So, 16, this is where they are complaining because they don't have bread, and they want to go back to Egypt. And so bread rains from heaven, and quail for meat, and manna each day, except for the 7th day of the Babylonian calendar, which is a superstitious day because of the number 7. For 40 years, it's not even 40 years, it's a gematria number symbolism. So yeah, we're pretty much done. It's pretty much obvious when you're settling a place that you need to provide food for the people. I've seen people speculate to the point where they are coming up with Moses creating a device that created manna. And they have working models of it, and hilarious. None of this was real, guys. Alright, so 17, the final chapter for this lesson. Israel murmurs for want of water. So you have bread, now you have water. What's the sacrament about? Bread and water. What do they represent? The gathering together of the broken body of Osiris that was shed for them. And Horus comes out of the conception with the church, who is his wife Isis, to restore the original church. And so that's why we're seeing stories about bread and water. This is the sacrament, as Mormons understand it. The offerings given at the temple, the food and drink offerings. Here you have a battle that occurs as he smites the rock in Horeb. That's also prophesied that in Zion fresh waters shall spring forth. That's also where this comes from, where that comes from. But the war, this is where Aaron and Hur, it's actually Ker, the CHK sound, they're holding up Moses' arms so that Moses literally is doing Pele El. The younger audience will not know that. Oh God, hear the words of my mouth. But that is the symbol for prayer in Egyptian, and it's also the symbol of Father, Heavenly Father, separating Adam and Eve, which is actually Lilith, not Eve, so that Eve or Lilith cannot get pregnant, give birth. And so you can see the bread and the water having to do with the birth of the man like Moses and the temple offerings. And so now you've got a battle where he is literally the one who separates the waters from each other. The dry land appears. You see that symbolism being played out here. And so here you have Jesus prevails against Amalek. Amalek is the Greek word for without king. The A is without. Malek is the king. Melech. And so he doesn't have the authority of being a king. He's the false Christ. And so you have Jesus prevailing. Let Jesus prevail. Referring to Israel. Yah, Prince of God, not prevail. Let's see if we can find if it actually says prevail in the text, because I'm sure Bruce put that in the chapter heading thinking he was clever, because he was a part of the original footnote committee and humiliated Nelson at the pulpit as a result. And so, yeah, Avraham Gileadi was denied putting his correct translation or his corrected. Whether it was correct or not, that's another thing. We don't know what it was. But he did understand about a man like Moses, but he also understood Jesus. And so when you see in your footnotes, not the revised version, they changed things for that. We were to get rid of the ORs or IEs. And the Foreign Language Committee was in charge of, if necessary, putting in a Hebrew or Greek, not an Egyptian, not the correct Hebrew even, or the correct Greek. But anyway, yeah, so for Israel, when I went over that, IE, that means that they disapproved of what Avraham Gileadi put, and Bruce R. McConkie appears to be the one who is responsible for Nelson screwing up the translation of Israel. But I'm looking for prevailed. or if he just put it in the chapter heading. And so I can check to see if that is the case. Oh, Israel prevailed. There we go. In verse 11. Exodus 17:11. Yep. Yep, there it is. Israel prevailed. So let's check Exodus 17, Blue Letter Bible. Westminster Leningrad Codex. And what verse was it again? 11. Okay. And Moshe, his hand, and Israel. There's a prefix determinative, but it is the same SR, spouse of God. Is an actual thing, but yeah, that's a, for me only, for my curiosity. Interesting. And so yeah, I see what they're doing here, but it's the Prince of Horus. The eye is the Eye of Horus from the Egyptians in Paleo-Hebrew, and so it's understood as the Prince, as Prince Horus. So Israel of Prince Horus. Interesting. And so it's not prevailed, and it's not that. Held up his hand, Israel, Prince of Horus. Now, Prince of God, Prince of Horus. The Horus Prince, or rather. So it's actually a combined title. Alrighty. And then his hands were heavy. They took a stone and put it under him. And so he sat on it. So he couldn't stand very long either. So he had to sit on a stone. That's an interesting symbolism from Egyptian. Okay. So yeah, Jesus is now fighting the battle. So this is apocalyptic literature. Even the book of Jesus cannot be confirmed because it didn't happen. It's apocalyptic literature. And so this is what gave rise to the book of Jesus, was this story right here of Jesus going into the promised land and fighting to establish the land. That's where that came from. And they just created a story and didn't know the archaeology of the land to get the right destructions at the right time and in the right order. Well, because Jericho didn't happen when the Rambam assigned the date for the Bible, and so that causes confusion when archaeologists are using their bias from the Rambam to justify the biblical text. You can't merge the two. But with the conquering victory in the promised land, it's another take on the fall of the great and abominable church. Moses builds an altar, Jehovah Nissi, because the Lord had sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Oh? They'll continually fight? So much for peace. But yeah, the Book of Mormon Nephites and Lamanites. Lamanites' continual war with the Nephites. That's where they got it from. Alrighty. So yeah, I'll take a break and I'll come back and go over the signs in the heavens with you for what I've seen there. And so I'm kind of curious as to how this is going to be in the likeness of things on the earth. We see the text and it associates with the signs in the heavens. So I'll be back. Alrighty, I guess I could teach you a little bit of Hebrew before we get into the signs in the heavens, since some of you are probably wondering how I know that it's not a verb prevailed in the past tense. In Hebrew, there must be prefix determinatives to verbs to indicate past, present, or future tenses. For present tense, it is the yod. If you know the Semitic phonetics, it's actually the zeta for Yah or Zeus in Paleo-Hebrew, the Z. But regardless, that's the letter prefix for verbs. If it's past tense, it's the N. And nu or nun, depending on whether it's Greek or Semitic Hebrew, after Babylon conquered the Jews and assimilated them into their culture. And for future tense, it's the T, the tau, same in both Semitic and Greek. And with the Aleph, the A, alpha, being the prefix determinative there, and it also had the C or K preceding it, which means like or as. It presents a different translation than what the Masoretes designated it to be, and what the English translations in our King James Version gave it to be. And so I know that it's not prevailed because there's no N. It would be, if it were the Masoretes, like I prevailed, as I prevailed. And that wasn't the translation. So that's not it. Israel prevailed. It was supposed to be in the plural. And so instead, I realized that it's Israel of, or Israel is, or during the Roman period, that's when they did titles. Israel, such and such, which would be Horus Prince. And so that's how that worked. But yeah, it ruins the Bible, just as Joseph Smith said from his teacher, Rabbi Sykes. So, alrighty, let's get into the signs in the heavens. So on April 27th, Jupiter is now officially in Pisces. He's officially on the back of the horse, the white horse, from Revelation chapter 19. And it's in preparation for the sign of the last day's supper of the Lamb in 19. And so this is why it's got me very curious, because the sun is in the sacrificial lamb or ram constellation of Aries. That is fall or collapse, but that is of government. Sun is for government, the right eye of Horus. Religion is for the left eye of Horus. And religion, church. And the moon, which is for religion. The two eyes of Horus are Peter and Egyptian, and yes, it's Seer. and the moon is at the tail of the sea beast, as it's in conjunction with Jupiter and Venus. The church of the Lamb has joined with the man like Moses. And they're commencing to part through the waters, having passed through the waters of Aquarius, and are now crossing the dry land, so to speak. Pisces, the parting, crossing through. See how this works? And at the end is the sacrificial lamb, of which the wedding supper feast occurs. And so there, the bride and the bridegroom, and the true Mormon Christ of the Mormons, as the Church of the Lamb, who chose to leave the great and abominable church. And you see Mars trailing behind. He's about to get drenched in the waters. And so the moon being in conjunction signifies the starting time. And it's not quite a full moon, but it's a waning, because we got a couple more days, the 30th, when it will be a partial solar eclipse as part of our tetrad. Now, anybody remember what happened in 2015 when the solar eclipse occurred? It was a solar eclipse, right? Let me check. I'm pretty sure it was that morning. I don't think it was the lunar eclipse. It was on conference morning of Saturday. Let's see. Solar eclipse for April 2015. It wasn't lunar? Okay. It was a lunar eclipse. So when is our lunar eclipse? Is that I have to check my chart that I made. Hold on. I have to bring up another file so I don't lose my place on the other one. Here, and then we type in lunar, or no, I guess it would be 2014, 2020, 21, 2022. There we go. Okay. Okay, yeah, it's solar on the 30th, but lunar on the 16th of May. So it started as lunar and had solars in between them. And so let's go back to 2015, 2014, 15. Oh, the solar occurred on the 20th of March. All right, that's okay. Gotcha. Yeah, so it was still the same thing, but it was after the lunar eclipse, and the lunar eclipse is going to be in May 16th, which is right around the time that Beltageze is supposed to blow. Interesting. A lunar eclipse, but a day without, or a night without a day, or a night without a night. Something like that. Interesting. Okay. But yeah, after the lunar eclipse came the fall of the church, the three prophets. And I refer you to the official declaration number 1, that Wilford Woodruff, who is no longer the president of the church because the United States of America shut it down for its crimes, not just polygamy, for their perpetual immigration fund and other such atrocities and rebellions and treasons and seditions. So we got to go to verse 11. So the Lord will never permit me or any other man who stands as president of this church to lead you astray. Okay? And so if it's the Lord, if it's God, there's going to be some indicator of how He's going to show Mormons and do something to show that the presidents of the church are leading Mormons astray. Lunar eclipses. Sun shall be darkened, moon turned to blood, stars fall from heaven. Those are tetrads, but there are specific other eclipses separate from those. Samson gives us 3 days of darkness. The Jesus story gives us 3 hours instead of 3 days. Even the Book of Mormon says 3 days. Only the gospel stories say 3 hours. So yes, Moses, we went over that for yesterday with the series videos for yesterday. That it's 3 days of darkness. And Samson gives us the star dates with the scripture stories. So that's why I see the connection with the signs in the heavens here with the scripture that I just went over with you. And so it's a solar eclipse on the 30th. I should remember to put that in this video for you. I have to turn it into a video, but I've already got it. And yeah, it's going to end on election day. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen as the thing on earth that is supposed to happen, the fall of the Great and Abominable Church. And as it's now 1 o'clock, I don't think it takes them this long to do what they were threatening to do to me today. I was expecting it in the morning. And so maybe their lawyers did get a hold of them. Don't do it! Stop! He did something! You must stop! Stop! Don't do it! But I haven't heard back from he who I sent off the complaint to. It would be nice if I could find out about it in the news tonight. But apparently nobody's even doing anything to help me yet either. Anyway. So, Mars, yes, that's Pharaoh, the false Christ of the Great and Abominable Church. I've been talking to you about this the whole years now, because I knew about all this. This was my field of education, my research, my study, my discoveries, that I've been the only one to do this in education, because it doesn't exist on the face of the earth. I literally chose the courses I wanted to take, and the collection of them, the guidance counselor turned into my degree, which was a dual bachelor's with a minor in what she wrongfully called ancient languages. And so she called it biblical studies. Yeah, she just anthropology of the ancient Middle East. Thomas Robinson was my instructor, as well as for Greek, and that's why the classical language is minor. So, yeah, I chose my degree, and the school, with the guidance counselor, turned it into a degree that does not exist on the face of the earth. It was just for me and only for me. And so I am the expert. I'm the only guy. Alright, so Pharaoh chasing Jupiter and Venus. Jupiter is Moses. Venus is the house of Israel. And they're crossing the dry land with the waters on both sides, Pisces. And Moses, or Pharaoh, is entering into the waters now. And I should have clicked ahead. I think it's on. Do I have that? Hello. Doing. This is the blank white sheet. I don't see any buffering. Am I being screwed with? It does not want to cooperate. Why is play at the bottom of this? It isn't. It is frozen. What is going on? Am I being hacked? This is very discouraging. Is that what they're doing? They're retaliating against me? How dare you! We will murder you, Travis! Yeah, I cannot get it to pull up. Oh my god. Hold on a second, let me pause for technical difficulties and I'll come back. So I had to reboot the computer. But I got a video clip for you now instead. Or with it. With the pictures. So yes. On the 30th, the Pharaoh is that's the death sign according to the Exodus story. And the waters come in on Pharaoh. Jupiter and Venus, the video clip that I got for you, they are one. And so kind of cool. Venus being a gas giant shows up like a star, all blurry and white, whereas I could see Jupiter and its rings, even though it too is a gas giant. But yeah, kind of cool. Mercury, I think that is now with the sun, or no, moon. Duh. But yeah, Uranus is there. Yeah. Mercury moved on, or is it behind it? Oh no, there's Mercury. Yeah, it's further ahead. And yes, it is within the Earth. So It's relative. But yeah. So for the partial eclipse, Aries, death of a king. Pharaoh is Mars, dying in the waters of the Red Sea, Reed Sea. You have Moses with the house of Israel going together, crossing on the land. And this is a remembrance for 8 April 2024, 2 more years. As, 30th? Well, because it's a partial solar eclipse, it'll be a solar eclipse on 8 April 2024. So this is the day of 2 years before that event. We had the one on the 1st. When did I do that remembrance video? 2 more years. So, anyway. So you can see the 2 Exodus stories. This is the second Exodus story. That of the plagues and all the stuff that happens, and the kingdom dies with the death of Pharaoh's son, and ta-da, we get to leave and go to the promised land. Here you have a story of Pharaoh wanting to destroy Moses and the house of Israel, and he dies in the waters. And so instead of the son, no son to take over the throne, Moses becomes the king. Here you have Pharaoh dying, Moses becomes the king. It's a different process, but the second one corresponds with the sign in the heavens that we're seeing here. And Jupiter in 2 years will be at the hind legs of the lamb. That's the death sign of Samson, as his 2 eyes are plucked out for solar and lunar eclipses. Peter, and he dies destroying the great and abominable church. That is the wedding feast day, and it's after conference, as the ones before conference. Yeah, that's right. Alright. So, I'm curious to see what happens on Earth, because the world reported that the church are bigots, not just the local papers, the world. So that's not going to be cool, because prior to 1978, the church was constantly condemned by the world for being racist. And so 1978 came, and the Edmunds-Tucker Act was dropped, and then the church retaliated by denying the Equal Rights Amendment for women. Utah became the one state to not ratify it, to keep it from being ratified. So women are still not fully human, even though they have the right to vote, and they're not equal as men and have rights with men because of the church. So there is also a falling star meteor shower in Aquarius on right above Mars. That is interesting. Very interesting, because it's right there at the bowl pouring out the water, falling stars, water being falling stars, And there's Mars, who is Pharaoh. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. And so, yeah, Abraham sacrificing Isaac, and the ram appears. That's where the sun and the moon are for the eclipse. An eclipse in the death sign. The Abraham sacrificing Isaac was a star date of 8 April 4 CE, which was over Russia. And it was 20 years from 8 April 2024 over the United States of America, crossing the 21st of August 2017. X marks the spot. I've gone over with you those, but this is a Sunday school lesson, not for this. So, fascinating. I don't know how I will survive to see what might happen. Because like I said, I'm expecting death threats today, assassination attempts. But so far, so good. I was expecting it in the morning. Maybe they're waiting until the end of day. That would be lame. But yeah, you'd hope that their lawyers would not counsel their clients to commit crimes. But not in Utah. Apparently lawyers love to counsel their clients to subvert the law to protect their client. They're supposed to be disbarred, thrown in prison with their clients. Alrighty.